You're listening to NT Paranormal After Dark. Nothing normal about it.
Well, as Emilio said in the comments, what's up, Paranerds? So we're back for episode number 40. I'm pretty excited. We've made it 40 episodes, Sarah.
Yay.
We've made it. We're a real podcast now.
I don't think that's factually accurate.
I think it's factually accurate because I was looking at our stats today, and we have 930 subscribers. 37% of them come from Texas. I was looking at our analytics. I was pretty excited about it. I don't know why you have to crap on all my hopes and dreams.
Because I hate you.
That's true. So today we're talking about Skinwalkers, like we do pretty much every other episode. But today it's official.
I wanted to give a shout out to a group member, though. My dad's birthday was on the 7th.
Because he's old.
Because he's old. I doubt he's watching, but happy birthday.
How old's your dad?
F.
F is a letter, not a number.
You talk and I'll think of that.
I think he's 60-something.
I think he's 28 years older than me. 53.
That's a weird way to determine a parent age.
61? 62?
Okay, there you go. Sounds good.
My grandma just turned 88.
I'm a nomad, not a muggle.
No mag? What are you saying?
We have no idea. Okay.
But yeah, Skinwalkers today.
Skinwalkers. And why is this so important to us? Because you saw one once.
Because
you might have seen one once.
The thing we ran into at Kyle, when I went home and researched it, that's what popped up. Like, when I entered all this stuff that happened.
Like WebMD or paranormal experience. You're like, what causes strange feelings and mimics people and causes spatial distortion and evil things?
Did you get a haircut?
Huh?
Nobody dyed his hair blue.
It's blue.
It's fancy.
And I'm also just not wearing a hat, so that's a thing.
But there was a couple of things I typed in that, what it brought up was a story from Reddit, like that someone had written about a skinwalker, and then that's what took me to researching skinwalkers. Oh yeah, no, I haven't seen Fantastic Beasts. Sorry.
God, I wish our comments auto-scrolled.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts.
Hey, Casey.
So, like, I'd kind of heard the term skinwalker before all that happened, but I just assumed it was like another word for werewolf, or
which is sort of
which kind of fits, but after that whole experience, you know, I had done the research, and then I came up with, oh yeah, okay, they said there's a skinwalker in the area, or in the history, and you were like, what the F? Blah, blah, blah. That's really scary. And I'm like, and I was like, werewolves are stupid,
because I hadn't told y'all I'd researched, because I didn't tell y'all what happened to me that first night until we went back.
Kind of, sort of. We remember it wrong. We did kind of talk about it, but...
Okay, I think, but I walked y'all through it or whatever,
right.
But I don't think I said the word skinwalker.
No. That history research that we did came later, after we were looking for animal tracks and responsible adult stuff in the back. Lot that didn't exist the night before. Oh my God, y'all's comments.
Catherine's son wrote a story on skinwalkers for English class. That's awesome. You should see if he'll let you send that to us.
Yeah, we'll read it.
I want to read it.
We'll promote it. Yeah, we're definitely down with the skinwalkers so much. But yeah,
Batman's crotch is full view. Oh my God, the door poster. That's awesome.
Okay.
Oh my God.
So anyway, but we were all about it, and I didn't realize the significance of it. And you were like head first into the lore and all that, and you're like, no, you don't understand. You need to look into it more.
Yeah.
And so I started digging into what a skinwalker was.
Freaking terrifying.
Yeah, because I was just like, werewolves are dumb, and you're like, no, it's not that. And then I was like, wendigos, and you're like, no, it's not that. And then started like looking into it, and we found more out. And so we kind of know stuff there about it, and we've kind of touched on it. But we've always kind of held off to do an official episode about it for whatever reason.
I just don't think it's come up.
I don't know. So what is a skinwalker? Like, specifically skinwalker. And we'll get into what it's related to, like, later, because you've got this whole red string around, like, the thumbtacks in the wall sort of idea, conspiracy.
My murder board?
Yeah.
My Skinwalker murder board?
You've got a Skinwalker murder board.
So, in the original legend, it's not Navajo. And it's a practitioner of magic that turns dark.
Right.
And through this, it warps them.
Well, okay, so just to pause, but what I was reading was that all the magic practitioners in the Navajo nation, they have to study dark magic, and like they have to be adept in the dark magic and the light magic to know how to deal with it, because they have like a balance thing. And the little bit of information I read is that they delve too deep into the dark, but the regular practitioners know those dark things too.
But like they have like what they would consider healers or
right.
light magic, in that
shaman,
people that swing towards the good side would not have this happen. But people that kind of do too much in the dark side, they join the dark side.
They do the forbidden blood magic.
They become skinwalkers, and it kind of warps them, not just their body, but their personality.
Right.
And they can turn into any animal, basically. But the main ones, coyotes, eagles,
owl.
Bear is a big one. But coyote is the most common.
Right. And I would imagine that's because
they live in New Mexico.
Yeah, and Arizona is a big one too.
Yeah,
and they were in North Texas for a little while, and I think what's really important before we get too far into is the Navajo Nation isn't just made up of just Navajo Indians. Mm-hmm. Like eventually other tribes, as we like exiled them
they
from
assimilated.
They ended up assimilating, and like the Anadarko was some of that. Some of the Comanche ended up getting assimilated.
It's been theorized that that's what happened to the Anasazi, that they disseminated to other tribes.
Right.
There's some other theories, dimensional portal.
So
werewolves.
is it just the Navajo that had the Skinwalker?
Well, I originally thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
I originally really thought it was just a Navajo thing, but when you were looking into the Anadarko, they had their own version of it.
Right, and they didn't quite call it a Skinwalker, which and that takes you down like this rabbit hole, like down this link hole of the Nival Delushi thing, right? And that's what they call a Skinwalker. And then when you translate that, that translates to
it who walks on four legs and on two.
Right.
Now the Navajo term is Ni now Delushi. Now douchey. You say it.
I can't. Yinaladushi?
Which is really
Yinaladushi.
It's really close to the one in the Anadarko language.
Right, yeah, and it like translated out in a very specific way. So you translate it from Skinwalker to Navajo, and then that gives you like a phrase, and then you translate that phrase, and then that turned into like this other phrase that the Anadarko called their thing. And so that's how I kind of drew a few connections. Hey April, how's it going? Cats, what the heck? I am.
Oh, can they turn into cats?
Cats.
Apparently
they can turn into
any
animal,
including other humans. But most common, like deer's another big one. Most commonly, it's people that are like, "Oh, I saw a coyote, and then it stood up and it ran on two legs." I saw coyote footprints that turned into human footprints.
In a lot of the stories, conveniently point to animals that are very abundant in those areas during those times. So I imagine it's part of like the folklore. It's like, if you see a coyote out there, when you're telling your kids about this thing,
run, it's a Skinwalker.
What I think's funny is Terrence said, have you spoken to anyone from the Navajo tribe?
They
will not
talk about it.
They will not. They first off won't talk to outsiders about it. Second off, they don't talk about it because this isn't just like us. We're like, oh, it's a legend.
To them, it's real.
It is dead real. Like,
we'd have to find someone who had
younger, the younger people are talking about it now.
Who wasn't real involved with res politics, and we'd have to find someone from the outside that lived on the res.
Right.
Like a farmer that just happened to have land on the res.
I mean, we do know. I mean, people have talked, and there's information out there, but they're really secretive about it. They don't want to talk about it because they feel like it summons it, like it draws it to you.
So a bunch of the Reddit stories I read are about skinwalkers, and there's a couple people that have posted stories that seem to be pretty legit because they're, the vague kind of the way that ghost stories are when they seem believable, and the people that are from tribal lands won't give their name.
Oh yeah, and so it's hey Haiti.
Jesus,
I know I read kind of phonetically. No, but no, you're right. It just adds this other level of mystique to it because even the ones who might be telling legitimate stories because of the particulars of where these legends and this particular thing happens, they can't give their name. So it seems like just another. It may as well be the guy that's posting about stuff.
Just enough to make it mysterious.
Yeah.
Catherine said Ghost Adventures went to Skinwalker. Yeah, they went to Skinwalker
we'll touch
Ranch.
On that. Yeah,
which is like a dream of mine.
Would you really be brave enough to go there?
Yeah.
Go in there?
Yeah.
I would hike during the day. At night,
hands down, I'd do a ghost hunt there at night.
That cave they went into was freaking awesome. I guess we can touch on it now. So what really? Okay.
What was so cool, and I don't like ghost. Like
I'm not.
I had never watched Ghost Adventures before you had me watch it.
Right.
It's definitely not.
It's a love-hate thing. Like we tried to go back and watch the Alton Bridge. I was like, I don't know. After Demon House came out, I kind of changed my mind. Tried to go back and watch that, and I hate them just as much as I ever did.
But the one at Skinwalker Ranch had so many similarities.
Yeah, that's what I thought was so cool. And I knew you would like that episode. Like, I wanted to call you up and be like, hey, you need to come over and watch this now. Because just the weird similarities to their investigation to the first time we went out to Kyle and had our experience. The main thing that, like, immediately caught my attention watching it was when they go into the cave and they go under the archway. And, I swear to God, every other episode, they're like, archways are portals, man. It's a portal. And I'm like, shut up, dude. Just go put some more stuff in your hair and lift some weights and beat up the ghost. But they went through there, and what they were talking about was so strikingly similar because when they went around when they passed through that, they were talking about all the sound just going away. Like they were shouting at their crew because the crew was gone.
Which is similar to what happened to me when I walked down that path.
So what happened to you? Explain it for the new people.
I hate telling this story because I sound like a freaking lunatic.
You are a freaking lunatic.
We went out there. It's a little cemetery that I used to go to when I was younger because I'm weird. And I thought it would be a good idea for a ghost hunt because it's real isolated. I knew the cops weren't going to bust us. No one's ever out there. It's small enough that it's easy to cover. And so we went out there scouting. It was just me, you, and Allie with flashlights.
Right. And I can vouch. We looked down that path in the back. And I'd commented. I'm like, oh, that's like the path that goes to the pet cemetery.
Yeah, we both had the same thought.
I remember seeing this path that, like, wound around. Like, almost went straight for a while and went off to the right and had, like, the tunnel of trees.
Trisha's new, she says. She was watching Ghost Adventures and muted it because we're more interesting.
Hell, yeah, we are.
But, so you and Allie, because I'm stupid and I'm prone to wandering off by myself in the woods at night, Brad and Allie take a sharp right to go look at some graves towards the back fence. And I go straight down this path. Now, I have a flashlight. Now, I'm looking around. I shine my flashlight up. I'm looking. It looks like, regular old oak trees, with the big leaves.
Yeah.
And it arches like...
And I think what's actually out there is mesquite trees.
Yes.
Mesquite trees.
Mesquite and cedar. Cedar, gotcha.
Yeah.
The thing, it arched, when you drive down one of those roads that's really pretty and it has the like that only,
Tree canopies.
Yeah.
But narrow.
And I walked maybe 50 yards at the most. And I realized I couldn't see y'all's flashlights or hear y'all at all. And I was, I decided to turn around and go back. And now I wasn't scared or anything. Like, I just was uncomfortable.
No bad feelings, anything like that. In fact, that was a big reason that we ended up investigating there later, because after that first night of being there, we were like, yeah, there's definitely nothing here, and we want to film a debunk video. But yeah, you had gone down the path, and you were like talking to us, and we couldn't hear each other. Like, we were like, where did Sarah go? Oh, she's gone so far down there that we can't, she's not hearing us shout. And apparently you were saying stuff back to, like, hey, we didn't know, we couldn't hear each other. And so you just came back down the path and
then we went home
and met up with us. Nothing of note. Completely nothing of note.
And then we went back the next day to do daytime shots.
No. We didn't.
Oh, we did the ghost hunt. We did the ghost hunt
We
first.
did our first investigation there,
and
right?
we went back the day after that investigation. It was right the day after, right?
Because all hell
broke loose, and we had to go try and debunk ourselves. And I walk down this same path, and there's one row of trees, and then there's an open field and a freaking road.
And a tree laying
over the path,
over where you would have had to walk.
A tree that had been there. It wasn't like freshly fallen.
And we had gone back there because we heard animal noises. Specifically,
we were looking for a coyote den.
We were looking for a coyote den because we heard pups and I heard something growl.
Yeah, we heard what
there.
We thought was the mama coyote and her puppies.
And we were trying to prove that, okay, this was animals back there. There was nothing.
Like, I don't expect we would have found a den. If there was, I figured the mom would likely to move them because humans had been trampling the area. But
the thing is the way that path and all that stuff back there is we have seen animals back.
Yes.
We're not saying there's no animals back there.
That's the place where we got the fox on thermal.
Right. But every time we have found legitimate animals back there, they show up on thermal through that because we tested that too.
Yeah, you can see anything through that past row of trees clearly on thermal. You can hear them clearly.
Yeah. You can hear them clearly. You can see them on thermal very easily.
Flashlight.
And you can see the evidence of where they've walked and dug and scat and stuff like that in the back. None of that stuff was present that first night.
Casey says so much happened at that place, and we've talked about it so often that sometimes I forget whether I was there or not. Yeah.
She wasn't there until like the fourth or fifth time we went there. It was a while. It's so nuts how that place plays with your memory in your spatial. So anyway, how that relates to Ghost Adventures is you had gone down this path. And we couldn't, and it was like you walked through a portal to another dimension, and like all sound was gone.
And then I remember when we went back and we found the open field, I was just so.
We were all just floored.
I was so confused, and I went through everything. I was like, did I have a seizure? Was I on medication? Was I drunk?
I tried to say that maybe you had accidentally took a sharp right at one point, but that didn't make sense either.
And the leaves. The thing is, like, I saw the kind of trees that were out there, and I go back and there's none of those trees. There's if I can trip, I'm gonna trip.
Yeah.
And there was a tree across the path.
Yeah, and it's only like 10 feet past the path. Like, we all would have seen it going in there, and any direction you would have just randomly went, you would have hit it. But that's how it relates to that Ghost Adventures episode. Well, the first thing that relates to that Ghost Adventures episode was that they went around that path. And Taryn asked, is it the way sound travels, in an arch,
that's
or
probably
that they were in a
part
cave?
of, like, if we're looking for logical reasons, yes.
Yes. In their case specifically, yes. But in our case, there's no reason the sound wouldn't have, because it's just trees.
Yeah, trees and a fence.
In knowing the layout of that place, like you could probably hear me from where we know the creek is at if I shouted at you across.
Because we've been hiking back there during the day.
Yeah. Very, very deep into that area.
It's a gorgeous place to hike. It's all oil.
During the day.
Yeah, it's all unused oil field property. Like, they were fracking out there, and then when they did the ban, they had to stop. So it's basically unused. Now, there is a housing community that's popped up along the state park road.
But it's weird how the creek kind of like bypasses all that, because you can just go and go and go, and you think you're eventually going to like
come back to something, but you don't.
Yeah, you're like, oh, we're gonna turn any minute and end up back at civilization. It's like, no, you're just walking deeper and deeper into the nothingness, and it's kind of like in our story, we do that until the sun's going down, and then it's too late. In real life, I don't think I would want to do that at all.
I wouldn't want to be out there past the time when the sun goes down. I have fully convinced myself that's some sort of portal to a hell dimension.
It is. At night, I'm too afraid to walk 2 feet without a flag. Yeah, and there's just something really unnerving about those even that first night, it was too unnerving, really, to go back there past the first time that you had gone when we didn't experience anything. There's just something really unnerving about that back fence and that back opening.
I think creepy path in the woods pretty much gives everybody creep vibes.
But that was one similarity to the Skinwalker Ranch episode. Like, they were also having spatial problems in the cave. Like, 1 minute, things would seem like they were a certain distance to them, and then they would realize, like, they had only, like, walked 10 feet, but they would turn around, and they were, like, big distances apart.
Which is something that I kept, because I was walking through the cemetery, and you and Allie were behind me, and you go, stop walking so far in front of us. And I go, but I only walked a few feet, and I turn around, and y'all are 50 feet behind me. Like, it's unnerving.
Yeah, that's just the environmental stuff that was going on. Like, I don't know how related to the Skinwalker thing that is, other than that happened to them at Skinwalker Ranch, that happened to us where we thought we...
And they've been said to be able to distort your perception.
Right. And the big deal at Kyle is 3 of us saw something by that back fence.
Yeah. Casey says, I think the most unnerving thing about that place, the space is always different. It's not right.
Yeah.
Which is true.
And it's not always crazy, but it's always different. Like, every time we go, like, sometimes we'll walk in and we're like, oh, it's small tonight. And then sometimes we'll go in and we're like, it's big tonight. And it's not necessarily creepy, but it is different. It's always changed. The spatial dimensions of it are always a little off.
The other thing we considered very heavily is that because they were fracking out there was infrasound and gas leaks from fracking, but I found out that site hadn't been used for about 10 years.
Yeah, like, all that stuff is just...
They did pioneer their own form of fracking. It's the town of Rio Vista. They pioneered Rio Vista fracking, which is apparently a more powerful form of fracking, so I was curious if that had factored in, but from everything I found online, it didn't.
Taryn says sounds like forced perspective, and we did test a lot of that too. A lot of it does have to do with that. Like, sometimes you'll walk in, and if the moon lighting's different,
or if it's misty at all, like.
But it's so hard to put into words what it's like unless you go there yourself. And I know we have some listeners that have gone and done their own investigations there, and they kind of had the same sort of experience, which I'm really surprised, because every time we take somebody new there, they're like, whatever. But it's so weird. And forced perspective, lighting, things like that, these are all things that we consider. But we have caught video evidence of that we didn't know we caught before, of, like, the perspectives changing, and so the other. And
Julie asked if this is like a seasonal change too, like
we've gone back during different seasons
and
to see
we've done different moon cycles and all sorts of things to try and figure out if there's some sort of rhyme or reason.
Right.
And we haven't yet found one.
Yeah. God, see, and this is...
I'm not saying there isn't one. We just haven't sorted it out.
Yeah.
Emilio said, yes, we went the first time, and the environment was way different than the second time.
Right, and like, one of the things I brought up to him is just the drive in.
Oh, it's horrifying.
The drive in seems so much longer than the drive out. Like the time...
Not the opposite.
It depends what's going on. It's not the same. It's not
that also,
consistent.
I'm going to attribute that to anxiety levels. Taryn says to show the evidence, but most of it's EVPs. Now, our website has...
Yeah, we actually do. We have. It's an older video. It needs to be... And since we have, like, a new show format, we are revisiting that case
But if you
with
go to
new
our,
stuff. But if you
go
want to
to
look
our
at the
website,
older,
just go to our EVPs and keep that up.
Oh my God.
LOL. Or if not, I'll send it to you after the podcast. But we've gotten like one of our coolest EVPs out there. Like one of my
Cool's an
favorites.
interesting word for
But
that one.
the other interesting thing we've noticed about our EVPs is we think it's us talking.
Right. So there was a lot in this. This definitely is what cements it to the Skinwalker legend, which I don't think you talked about this just a minute ago, but with the Skinwalker sighting, how all three. Oh yeah. We briefly glossed over that before I got into the audio.
I'm gonna see if I can link the EVPs to the message thing.
Okay. You should be able to do that.
Okay.
So with the EVPs, what was really interesting is when we made our last video about it, which was after like 10 investigations, we were like, okay, we're going to collate everything over 10 investigations and put it all together. And when we were going back, and actually what spurred that is we were writing me and you were writing the chapter together about that investigation for the book. And basically what happened is we were re-going over all the footage, and there was a ton of stuff that I had basically skipped because there were segments in there where you would hear like a voice, and it would sound like me talking to you, and then like you would respond to it, but then I'd be like, what are you talking? Like I hadn't talked. Like I
can't link it. I don't know how.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There would just be a lot of instances where we would be responding to each other, but the other person wasn't talking. And since we all wear positional microphones, what would be interesting is like the microphone you would be wearing. Mm-hmm. You would hear me say something like, "Hey, come over here and come check this out," and you'd be like, "Hey, what are you saying?" I'm like, "I'm not saying anything." And then you would listen to and it would just be totally normal, like we didn't think anything of it. But then you would listen to the audio on my microphone, and during that same stretch of time, you wouldn't hear anything from me. Like, I didn't say anything. And then you would just hear you in the distance on my microphone going, "Hey, what's going on?" And I would just be like, "I didn't say anything. What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And those instances happened a lot.
We didn't realize it at the time, but
yeah, you can. Why is that significant?
Because they mimic human voices. That's like a Wendigo. It'll stand outside the community, and it will call your name to lure you out. Skinwalkers will do the same thing. They'll act like an animal or a child in pain, or someone who's frightened and ask for help. Let me check the track number on that. And they mimic human voices. So, in human faces. It's just another thing that points back to the same, sort of deal. It's tracks 13 and 14. In track 13, that's the galloping noise. What you hear running, that's not us, is what's important to that track. That was something else running that didn't show up on thermal. But Casey wanted us to describe the.
You start with that because I'm looking for the.
So we were out there, and Katie and Justin were out there too, but Justin was in the car because he's a wuss. And then me, you, and Allie, and we had kind of grouped up by that back fence, and I was looking back there, and what I saw was a set of. It was something vaguely human-shaped that walked past, very tall, but what I saw most was the legs, which were wrong. It's the only way I could describe it at the time was just wrong. Like an animal's legs made to walk upright, or like they had an extra joint. It was so dark, it's hard to describe. And everyone saw something different. Like Brad saw the top of it, the shoulders. And then Allie saw when it walked past and it seemed to lean back and look at us. And she said she saw its face. So 3 people, 3 different things on the thing, but we all saw the thing. I went through the whole, well, maybe it was a bear. Except, bears aren't super common locally.
Sorry, I wouldn't exactly listen. I was trying to, so I posted a link to the last video we did about that. Don't judge. I suck at video.
It's an old video?
Yeah. Did you talk about the frequency that the EVP was in?
I was telling the story about seeing the thing.
Oh, yeah. That was nuts. Like, none of us saw...
Yeah, deer upright is about right.
Yeah.
Pale skin, thin, legs are wrong. Yeah, and very tall.
Yeah, and what's really funny is the part of it that I saw didn't seem like it was just walking straight. It was like, I always described it like somebody like sneaking.
Strafing?
Like strafing, like sneaking by, like something wearing like a trench coat sort of thing. But I only saw like the back sort of part of it. And I think it's funny, we all saw something kind of around, like right at the same time. And we're all like...
It seems like different parts drew our focus.
Right, yeah. Where Allie saw a face, I saw like a body, you saw legs, and Katie just lived in denial that entire night, and Justin hid in the back of our car. But none of us ever said, oh, it's a skinwalker, or oh, it's a creature.
I don't think we had that information. Then we thought it was a person.
Yeah, I straight up thought somebody had walked by that fence back there. Because
didn't you start doing that thing, hey...
Yeah.
Who's messing with us?
Yeah, I was like going back there with like a flashlight, and that's when you were hollering at me because you're like, hey, you just got done yelling at us for trying to go back there because the animal sounds had stopped suddenly.
And the other thing that's real common out there is mountain lion attacks. That's off the State Park Road in Cleburne, and they have horses getting mauled all the time. What did the face look like? Bone white?
Yeah, the way Allie describes it, like somebody with a painted face. Not like a white face, but like a face painted like with thick lead paint and black eyes, I believe.
Yeah, I don't remember, but yeah, she had nightmares, and that gave me a sleep paralysis episode over here. The Kyle stuff. Yeah,
and what's funny is her description of the face kind of harkens back to your description of the face you saw at the Great House thing before I had even met you.
Yeah.
But
the other thing that was interesting about that is my nephew Jonathan, his friends used to party out there when he was a teenager.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That was another random thing that kind of popped up.
Yeah, because I brought it up to him and he was like, the first thing he said to me, I said, oh, we saw something weird out at Kyle Cemetery, and he was like, were its legs wrong? I was like, what? Dude, no muzzle, like a human face. And then he said they were driving down the road and they saw a white arm come out of the tree and just reach out. I was like, that's weird that you just randomly say that when you're like, yeah, we were hanging out at Kyle, and you interrupt and say, were the legs wrong? Why would you say that? And then years later, I found two other people that said they had done paranormal crap out there, and it made them quit because it scared them so freaking bad. They're like, no, I'm not going back. And we found that video of the people that ran.
Yeah, straight up. Just, what is that? Oh, my God. And they never say huge. What it is. Yeah, and then they run. They just bolt out of there.
Which I don't fault them for.
If I saw in the cemetery what I saw walk by the back, like in there with me, I would have ran to... Let's put it this way: when we heard the running at us, like we were like, "Let's get out of here."
Yeah, that was
right,
alarming. But we've also sort of developed our own mythology about this place, like things we just think can happen and can't happen.
Right.
Like as long as we stay in the cemetery, we'll be fine. Is somehow our logic.
Well, it's funny. Okay, so we're talking about Skinwalkers.
I want to bring Haiti out there, actually, but we're doing a different place.
So Skinwalkers are... That's one of my questions. Are Skinwalkers good guys or bad guys? Or
bad.
They're supposed to be evil. They're bad.
They're tricksters. Like foxes in Asian folklore, or coyotes in ours.
So what's funny about, specifically to Kyle, the stuff we looked up was that they had put something there that they had described it matches the description of Skinwalker, but they said, but the thing we read was as like a curse and like protection.
So since there was a new person watching, we did research after the Kyle incident and found out that the Anadarko and Comanche had a battle there. Basically, the Anadarko, it was their holy land, and the Comanche kept trying to take it. And then people wanted to
white people wanted to settle.
Colonizers wanted to settle the area. And the Anadarko struck up a deal with them. Basically, help us fight the Comanche, and we'll let you settle here. So they win.
Emilio says Skinwalkers are
morally ambiguous. So the Anadarko and the settlers win. They run the Comanche off. First off, they scalp a bunch of the Comanche and hang their scalps from trees. The Comanche curse the land. Then the settlers decide to march the Anadarko up to a res in Oklahoma on foot. So the Anadarko curse the land with the Anval Delushi.
What we call
that's supposed to protect the land.
We'll call them SW.
SW.
Right, so it's so weird. Like, it fits and it doesn't fit at the same time.
That's what Casey says. I always thought they were protectors of nature, but evil towards humans. And that's some of the... Now, if you're going with the Navajo legend, they're just... They have no morals. They're tricksters. They're evil because they become evil through dark magic. Now... Other legends seem to be like they're almost an elemental protector.
Did you talk about the significance of what we were talking about with us hearing our voice, but it wasn't us?
Yeah, that they can mimic.
That they mimic. Because you had read a thing about how they'll like slow, like you'll get like herded, and then somebody will get like separated, and then they get like replaced.
Yeah,
and
Skinwalker will
that's something that happens, like actually happens to us out there. Like we're real careful about. Okay, let's stick together while
we
we're
have Skinwalker test questions.
Right, yeah. Which we totally forego that one time you locked me out of the car.
That was such an accident.
I was desperate to get back into the car, but...
We always get herded there, even when we try to stay together. Yeah, that's the thing, and I've noticed, like, something will happen over here. Something's going on to the left, we'll all turn left.
And then, inevitably, one of us will still be, like... doing something else. Like it's usually like me or you or something. I'm like, no, there's something over here by the fence, and you're like, hey, you realize you're all by yourself now. You don't get to come back to the fence with us. It's like... And
then the one time me and Allie were standing by the back graves, and you had gone around back of the car, and we saw you walk from behind the car over to the graves on like the right if I'm looking towards the parking lot. And we tried to say something to you, and then you popped up behind the car, and we were like, oh shit.
Right.
That's evil Shadow Brad.
Yeah.
So what they do is they kind of take over your personality. They'll jump into the group. And another thing...
But they're not quite right.
They're not quite right. They are mechanical. Another thing they'll do is they'll just add themselves to your group, and they can alter your memories. So you think that person was always
So you're just screwed.
Yeah.
Either way.
They're basically all freaking powerful.
Freaking blood magic witch demons. I don't like them.
But yeah, they sound mechanical. They'll walk mechanical. I don't know why people don't notice if this is a thing.
They alter your memory.
But
it's you don't realize you're part of the Matrix because you're part of the Matrix. Okay, so what would you classify a Skinwalker? Is it a cryptid? Would you alien, supernatural?
I guess it would be a cryptid.
Like you lump it in with Bigfoot?
Yeah.
It's an animal?
Pretty much.
It's manimal.
I mean,
man bear pig.
The thing was, what we saw out there was so solid.
Right, yeah, that's the thing. It wasn't like none of us went, I just saw a ghost.
No, we all saw something solid. And that's the thing that unnerved me about it, is if it's that solid, it can hurt us.
And the other thing scary is like the one time we were pulling up and I saw something in the graveyard like dart out of our headlights. That was one of the nights where we just like went up to the fence and were like, hey, F this, never mind. But I saw it like as the headlights like passed over it, and you're like, maybe it was just a tall headstone. But then we looked over there and there's no tall headstones over there, and I was just, I hate coming to this place. Why do we keep coming back? But so I don't know. It's definitely a shapeshifter. Do you think? What is the relationship between Skinwalkers and other legends? Like, because you've kind of connected the dots on some of this stuff. Like, do you think the Skinwalker and the werewolf legend are one and the same?
That when this area was like first being settled and people came in from the north and kind of headed south, that this legend sort of followed that trail and morphed as it moved. So you get your Canadian natives and your western natives with the Wendigo, and then it kind of heads to New Mexico. And
so what's a Wendigo?
That's someone who eats human flesh, and like the dark magic practitioners get warped. It's out in Rio Vista, Mina. I wonder.
Oh my God, it's not too far from the only place I've ever met.
It's a restaurant. Yeah,
that's what we were doing that night.
The night with me and my dad and those two other people ran into you at the restaurant. We were at Kyle. We had stopped to have food. And we don't give out that location to just any. I'm fine giving it to you, but we don't give it to a lot of people because people have been known to deface that cemetery.
Yeah, because it's so secluded.
And I'd feel really bad if something like that happened.
And it's technically not legal to be in there at night without permission.
And I'd feel really bad if someone went out there and got ate by a mountain lion.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Do you think... Okay, so...
But anyway, so Wendigos eat human flesh. They get warped. They crave human flesh, and that's the one that whispers on the wind for you to come out. Became the Skinwalker, and then as it moves on to the south, it becomes the more traditional kind of werewolf thing with the Rougarou. That's just a man that turns into...
The what?
Rougarou. It's a Rougarou.
That's not a thing.
It is a thing.
What's a Rougarou?
It's a werewolf. It's just Cajun for werewolf. Do you ever go and start in daylight and stay till late? We
have.
We have, yeah.
Yeah, a few times, and the results are varied. That's one of the big problems with the location specific. I knew this episode would end up about the location too, but that's one of the things about the location is there's no consistent data between, like, everywhere else we go multiple times. There's consistencies, like, we get kind of the same evidence a lot, so we're able to narrow it down over multiple trips to figure out what something is or isn't. But there, we get so much varying degrees of stuff, and it really has almost no rhyme or reason. And that's not to say that we haven't run into a ton of stuff there that has logical explanations. Like, we're definitely not that group that jumps to that conclusion, but we have had so many individual, personal, and documented
I feel the need to put
there.
a disclaimer out there where we know we sound crazy, and we're not saying this is real.
It's funny because this is the one investigation we'll talk about where we sound like lunatics. We sound like that group that goes out there and finds ghosts everywhere we go. And the thing is we're like one of the most hated groups because everywhere we go, we don't find anything. We explain everything away, and people aren't super huge fans of that. We go to this place, and so much stuff has happened to us that people do like the obvious stuff that we normally do. It's like, well, did you have a sleep paralysis episode the night before? Or do you think there could be animals in the back?
I'm just such a
no.
non-believer. This is the only place that makes me question my beliefs. But back to the legend thing, there's a local legend in Cleburne about the Goat Man. And I know every town has a freaking Goat Man. But the thing about the Cleburne Goat Man is I got curious if this had spawned from the Skinwalker legend, because Kyle is less than a mile, like as the crow flies, to Old Foamy, which is where the Goat Man said to live. So I was kind of curious if over time this had morphed from the Native American legend.
Right.
But I went to the museum, the Leyland Museum in Cleburne, and asked the people that work there, and I asked around, and no one kind of could trace it. So I don't know, but it sounds right.
Sounds a lot. It's interesting that a lot of those things are kind of all on that same, dare I use the word, ley line. But if you look at a lot of the, every town's got some kind of Goat Man legend. It's always on a certain bridge. But it's funny because with this particular group of instances that we were kind of following through, like that Cleburne, Rio Vista, that kind of southern North Texas. I don't know what you call that region, but we were looking at it's all off of that Nolan River branch, and Old Foamy, and right there off of
the Brazos is the big one in the area.
And all that stuff kind of seems to like line up, and you can like if you put it on a map, you can almost kind of see where the rumors spread.
Taryn asked, "What is the most convincing image or video of a skinwalker?" And I don't know. We were looking at it before the podcast.
None really. It's always something blurry or something,
or it
very
looks like
obvious.
a coyote with mange.
Yeah.
Amelia says that's the problem with any hotspot. The activity happens when it happens. If you're there to record it, that's great. But most of the time, nothing happens when you're. Yeah, that's the way it goes. Amina says, "Have y'all done Rio Cemetery?" No, because it's in the town proper, and we'd have to get permission.
To get permits, and then on top of that, like doing just like the Alton Bridge investigation, doing investigations in those highly populated areas that. Especially like outdoor ones where it's like right there by like the main roads or whatever.
There's so much interference.
There's nothing you can do to like. You might get a cool voice or whatever, but there's nothing you can do to.
And it's like why we haven't done Old Foamy because I think
dangerous.
Well, I think that legend's crap. But I personally know someone who was run off the road there. My friend Brittany got run off the road there, and there's nowhere to park. We can't be on the bridge because people drive down it crazy fast, and it's a 1-lane bridge over a creek. It's just really it's a blind curve. It's super dangerous, and we get almost every class that comes through Cleburne has one death on that road.
So I want to go back to like kind of your goat man. Like that was a really cool revelation. I thought you had it that one time because I didn't realize it was all like physically connected. Like if you walk through Ham Creek, eventually it comes down to the Brazos, which actually will connect back to Old Foamy. Like you could walk, it'd be a long ass walk, but you could walk from Old Foamy to Kyle Cemetery if you followed the bank. Yeah,
less than a mile.
It's treacherous, but
which I didn't know, but then I kind of looked at it on a map and I was like, this place is right up the ass of Old Foamy.
It makes me wonder if there's not. In the goat man at Old Foamy is so dumb, but it makes me wonder if way back when that started, if somebody hadn't seen the same thing we saw.
Or just heard the legend.
Yeah.
And that spawned this whole idea.
Yeah, because it's really funny that when we kind of found this information about this particular area, Rio Vista, like a lot of even the historians... Or historian, but like the local people that do
the local town gossips is what we ask because they have the best info.
But they didn't know about it. Like this is something I found in like an old
an 1800s textbook.
Yeah, an 1800s Texas history book that was talking about the area, and it had its own. And this was just like this little sub part of it that I happened to find on a search, and it was just really nuts to have all that stuff in there. And they had a lot of information about the structure of the Anadarko, because if you look up information on the Anadarko Indians, what you're going to get is a bunch of stuff about Anadarko, Colorado, and how they came from Oklahoma. But prior to that, there were factions of them down here, and there's just not a lot of information about that. And I had happened to find this chunk that talked about that specific region and in that conflict that was going on with the Comanche.
Emilio asked Old Foamy. So there's this road by the lake in Cleburne called Old Foamy. It's just this country road, blind turn. There's a dip and a bridge without rail. Like it's just a road across a creek. But locally, it's the same as the Goatman story. You got to stop on the bridge and honk 3 times, like Alton. It's the same story that exists.
Or Lake Worth.
Yeah, it's the same story that exists in every crappy town in Texas. Now, people have taken it a little too seriously and done creepy stuff out there, like cutting dogs open.
Yeah.
Because, it ties into the whole Cleburne Satanist.
And there is some actual stuff that had, like, not the Goatman, but during the Satanic Panic era, somebody actually cut up their wife and kids and dumped them into that freaking creek. It's a creek, right?
Yeah.
Or is it a river?
It's a creek.
It's a creek, and dumped them in that creek, and they found it. And when I first read it, I was like, "Oh, that's just like a local legend." And it's like, no, that one actually happened. And then there's another one where they had cleared out part of it, and they found this like old abandoned house in there that had bodies in it. But that one I never like confirmed. Nobody could ever point me in the right direction on if that actually happened.
But this area of Rio is notorious for car wrecks. Mina's talking about a kid from our class in school that died out there, and then I had another friend that died in this same area. This is just a really dangerous area. So you'd think if it was going to be haunted, like it'd be the traditional ghosties. But it's not.
So, I don't know. I just want to keep us on track. But, so, Skinwalkers, what are, like, its powers? What's its abilities? You know, like if you're doing the trading card for Skinwalker, what do these things do? Like, what is the big deal? Aside from what we've seen, you know, just...
Emilio, just real quick, so I think people who hear about hauntings and then go out there and do stupid rituals are actually creating the haunting from legends by doing... Yeah, I mean... they probably shouldn't do that. But, okay, so Skinwalkers, they can... change what they look like. They can become any animal, basically.
So are they okay? So I know it's a Navajo witch, basically. Male or I say witch.
It can be either.
It can be either. But it's normally in
Thanks for watching, Casey.
It's normally like in person form, from what I understand. It like lives in a. They
person
live in a
and
cave.
Coyote seems to be the two.
Yeah. But does it spend most of its time in its animal form, or
there's no
nothing we know because they don't talk about it? Okay.
Yeah, most of what they talk about is it's when they see them switch from one to the other.
What was interesting is on that Ghost Adventures episode when they're hiking and they're going up to that cave, they did find a like on the way there, like near the cave, like they had visited the cave, they scouted out, and then they went back that night. Between the time they had left and the time they went back, they found ashes where somebody had been doing a Navajo ritual, and the guide they had with them was like, no, and like left them alone.
Yeah, they don't F with that.
They're
smarter than
they're
us.
Like, no, there's a Skinwalker out here. And they're like, are you serious? They're like, yeah, bye. And just left them.
Skinwalker trading card, scare -10 to defense, superior 100 to shoot yourself. So they can mimic humans. They can mimic human voices. They can distort memory and spatial awareness.
Do they have goals or anything? Like what are they
It
supposed?
seems to be just to torment you.
Like a vampire, it needs blood to survive. Like people know that
they don't
ghosts
do any
are there
of this.
because they have unfinished business. We don't know what the motives of a Skinwalker are.
It's like so in Japanese myth, the fox is this same creature. They confuse it by saying hello twice when they enter a phone because language confuses it, and it has no motive. All it does is trick you. All it wants to do is screw with you.
That's nuts, and that's so similar. It's so weird that there's on opposite sides of the planet you have similar things like that. And this sort of thing comes up in similar situations come up in different cultures. Like we were saying, you got the Wendigo. In Europe, you have werewolves or lycanthrope, people that turn into animals. And it's kind of...
South American culture as the jaguar people.
Yeah.
It just seems to be whatever animal is big over there at the time. And in France, it's werewolves because of that big murder spree that went on.
Right.
But it's crazy because Skinwalkers, it's like they took everything all these other things can do and just gave them all the powers. This character, like if I was on an MMO, I would say this character needs a serious nerfing because it is so freaking overpowered.
Freaking OP, stupid tank, and it can fire magic missiles and heal itself.
But that's the creepy thing is it has no motive. It doesn't want to eat you. I mean, it might, but it's not looking for food.
See, that's the okay. So that's the big thing with the legends is every legend I saw is like, don't mess with these things. Don't mess with these things. Will it kill you? Well, that's not part of anything that I could find. It's like, well, does it take you? That's not part of any... It doesn't actually say what it's going to do to you.
Mina asked if we think we can bring stuff home. I don't. But we do get a sort of after effect from the Skinwalker thing.
I think you do get, like, aftershocks. I don't necessarily think it's coming back with you.
I think that's anxiety-driven.
Yeah.
But for like a week after that first time we saw that thing at Kyle, I had a hard time walking outside my house. I felt like I was being watched.
Well, and that time you came back from Great House too, you and Aaron and somebody else,
Cassie and Jeremy, we all slept in the same freaking room because
y'all something in the backyard. Yeah.
Yeah, what if you accidentally take home a Skinwalker Ashton instead of real? That's why we have our Skinwalker test questions.
And that's also how we came up with the Dimension 134B story.
But yeah,
because I feel like I feel like we're not all paired in the same dimensions we started in anyway.
Yeah.
Like I feel like over time we've like lost a person and gained the alternate version and then lost another one, and so we're just shuffled like a deck of cards at this point.
I just want to say I'm so glad Emilio had something like I don't want to scare anyone, but I'm so glad someone else went out there and just had anything happen. Yeah. Because I'm tired of feeling like
he got an interesting picture. You know I'm not big on orbs or anything like that, but he did catch orbs or mist or anything like that. But it was interesting. He did the shots right where you take consecutives and I can't remember if it was 2, 3, or 4, but you had like the regular shot, and then he had another, and there was kind of like a blurriness, not an apparition, but there was kind of something that definitely seemed like it had some substance. Could have been blur, could have been a lot of things. But what was interesting is they took pictures over there because they kind of felt like they needed to take pictures, and I think they heard something too. I'm sure Emilio will pop in and tell me exactly how I'm wrong, but it's just, I don't know. And for the longest time, we had never heard anything about that location, anything like that. And then later on, we found somebody that was like, oh, yeah, we hear things moving around and walking towards you. And somebody saw something, and I contacted them directly, and they said, we don't want to talk about it.
People are so superstitious.
Dude, they were like, no, after that place, I was like, we investigate there a lot. And they're like, well, stop. And I was like, well, can you tell me what happened? Because we've been out there several times. Nothing bad's happened. Maybe we have an explanation. And they're like, we don't talk about it. We stopped investigating. Bye. Like, it was like they shut that down. And it was really interesting. And because we picked that place because there were no rumors about it.
Yeah, because it was...
And what's funny is Skinwalker was never the first thing we went to because we found out a bunch of things about Rio Vista.
When I went out there when I was 16, they did have the whole, it's a haunted cemetery story. But what cemetery doesn't?
Right. Well, but so the highway that's off, was that 917, 916?
Something like that.
Something. There's the road you go down for it has this urban legend about it where people will pick up a ghost hitchhiker, and it's not really near enough to the cemetery for it really to affect it, but we were like, well, it's really interesting that it's like right in that area because it's over by that bridge that you turn off of like right before you get to Fisherman's Paradise and all that garbage. And so I was kind of researching into that, and when I was researching that, I came across the Kenneth McDuff.
The serial killer?
The serial killer that used to drop off body. And so that was the route I was taking with it. And like everybody had forgot about that. And then I came across the Indian burial ground thing before I even got to the Skinwalker.
It's funny because we made so many Pet Cemetery references and then wound up in a legit Indian burial ground.
Everybody always jokes like, oh, aren't you afraid to accidentally wander on some like Indian burial ground?
Like this whole state's Indian burial ground.
And it turns out that we like stumbled into that joke because like later I'm like, because you didn't even believe, I was like, hey, you're not gonna believe this, and you're like, what? I'm like, it's Indian burial ground. Whatever, what did you find? No, like really, it turned out that this thing happened, you know? But I don't know, it's real weird, and they're so close-lipped about it because it's a very strong belief. It's part of their belief system that these things are real. So they don't talk about what its motives are. They don't talk about what kind of people become skinwalkers.
Well, and I think the scariest thing a monster can do is not have motives.
Yeah.
It's like that's why some serial killers are so scary. Just if they kill randomly, like. They've got no reason or rhyme. It's something so alien to you, you can't grasp it. Which I think that's the scariest thing. I mean, that's what's scary about aliens to me, is we wouldn't understand what they wanted or if they wanted anything. It's like, what do you do with a creature whose sole motive is just to F with you?
So here's it. Like, we couldn't find pictures or video that was particularly convincing. I've heard some convincing stories before, things like that, but I've never seen something like this. Like, you talk about werewolves, like everybody's heard of it's widespread but I don't think that there's like a group of people that like really strongly believe, like, not is like a nation or what, like, you get what I'm saying, that strongly believe that werewolves are a thing or whatever, you know. Maybe the you know, over in Asia, they have a different view of the spiritual world and things like that. So I guess I'm totally off base with that. But this is such a strong belief with the Navajo Nation, even now in 2019, that they take it very seriously. And what I thought was really interesting is I came across this particular case, which this just happens to be what I pulled it off of, Sword and Scale, but you can look up the actual case stuff. But the Flagstaff Skinwalker murder, and it's so ingrained and so like believed that it was allowed as the legitimate defense, like a theory that was posed in court for this like murder that happened. And it was totally nuts. Here, let me throw it up real quick. So, you guys can probably see the link there. Actually, here, I'll post the link to the story. Boom. Oh, shit. No, don't do that, Brad. I almost just ended the feed. Okay, there we go. There's the link to the story if you want to read it on your own. But we'll talk about it. So, this is just talking about the actual Skinwalker legend. But George Abney, he was this English professor in northern Arizona, right? And here's the article. He was this English professor in northern Arizona that was indicted on this murder charge of, what's the lady's name? Hold on, I don't want to get it wrong. Was arrested and charged with her murder.
The woman later identified as Sarah
San Jacinto. Okay, sorry. So it was a Navajo lady. This is off of a Navajo reserve, right? So there was. Let me talk about it. Just go back. Very little has been documented about skinwalkers and possible murders attributed to such an entity, except for one case in June 1987. This is in our lifetime. Behind the Flagstaff Medical Center in Arizona, the body of a Navajo woman was found nude, beaten, and suffered numerous fatal stab wounds to her upper torso. Her left breast appeared to have been bitten off, and the bruising on her face was so severe that she was barely recognizable. The woman, later identified as Sarah San Jacinto, had been a housekeeper for the hospital, and it was her first time working the night shift weekend. She turned up missing. Her car was found parked near the east wing of the hospital, but her body was found on the rocky hillside to the west. George Abney, a former English professor of the Northern Arizona University, was arrested and charged with her murder. Abney claimed he was having a bizarre... Oh, this is how he got picked up. So they... First off, so I read the bigger case. I won't just read that verbatim. But he got picked up not because of any physical evidence or priors or anything like that. He went to the police and told them he had been having these strange dreams about murdering this lady, like not as like a confession, like he was having like psychic sort of dreams or whatever. And he went in and talked about it, and they just slapped the bracelets on him like right then and there. He and the thing about it is he had described some of the stuff that had happened.
He was a devout Christian who believed he was receiving prophecies from God, but his defense lawyers brought up another possibility.
San Jacinto, being part of the Navajo Nation, may have been attacked by a skinwalker, a broken stick across her neck, and clumps of grass believed to have been from a graveyard near her. Truck had among the defendant's evidence that had been among the defendant's evidence.
Oh crap, that's where skinwalkers live. I forgot, in cemeteries.
Yeah. Even at the height of satanic panic and cult hysteria, nobody bought Abney. So I mean, he was found guilty anyway. But what's funny is I think in the comments for this one here, yeah, okay, so check this out. Oddly enough, I stumbled across this. I was one of the jurors in that trial on Flagstaff. It was a convincing defense. One of the jurors said that Skinwalker was a convincing defense for what happened. I mean, ultimately they still found the guy guilty, but...
Guess they probably should have. Yeah, that's... Because they do attribute, like, cannibalism is a common story with them and stuff like that, but it's not their motive. So...
And who's to say that she wasn't doing something that, like, you know, like desecrating its area or invading its turf or doing something against, you know, whatever it is they do. I don't know. Or maybe it just doesn't like housekeepers. Either way.
Poor lady, though. That's brutal.
Yeah, whatever happened to her was totally horrible.
I hope her boob was shoot off post-mortem.
Well, and see, actually,
human bites freaking hurt.
So that's a thing that could be attributed to, like, skinwalker activity, is, like, they might have found bodies of people that had just died for murdered or of natural causes and had been out there, and then when somebody had discovered the body, they found where an animal had been gnawing on this thing, and then they went back to their tribe. You know, and I'm talking, you know,
way back.
Yeah, 1700 to 1800s, and they went back and told their tribe and said, "There's, you know, this is what's going on." And the tribe elders like, "Yes, boy, that's where we put the evil, which is that, you know, turn into animals and nod your mom's boob off."
Ugh. But there are a lot of good stories, like skinwalker stories on the internet. You know, and they're internet horror stories, so I'm not taking them at face value, but they're good stories.
Since that experience, I like anything that has a skinwalker in it now. Like, it was something ultimately that I ignored, but now I perk up, like, when I hear it, because it is such, like, a cool...
I forgot to mention another thing commonly associated with skinwalkers is the smell of death or rotten flesh.
I don't think
we've never experienced that, but that's another really common thing people...
The funny... so you were talking about, like, we've developed our own rules and thought processes for Kyle, and we have stuff that doesn't fit Skinwalker totally, because, like, it never fit. It's like its own thing. But we always feel like for a long time, we felt like, oh, maybe we're being herded or something's attacking us. But then, like, for a while, like, we feel like there's something there that's got used to us and likes us and is protecting us from the thing on the other side of the fence, because one of the...
That's the second EVP on the tracks that we posted. 14 is or is that 13? I don't know, but it's the thing that gallops at us. And after that, it's really hard to hear on that EVP. There is a couple voices that sound like they're overlapped, that sound like they're saying there's a monster in the woods.
Right. But it sounds like a warning. Like, don't go back there.
There's a monster in the woods.
There's a monster in the woods.
Yeah.
And it's just...
It has a cadence. It's real weird.
It's speech. Like, the EVPs we've got at Kyle, that is one of the few places where we've got EVPs, and I've never gone, oh, that's parody. That just sounds like speech. No. The way those sentences file out in sound, it's
undeniably speech.
Whether it's paranormal or not is totally deniable, but, you know, it could be somebody way off in those backwoods with a radio.
And you talked about you were going to talk about the frequency of the go back now.
Oh yeah, well, that and the monster, and they're both at separate frequencies, but they're below 80 hertz, which human vocal cords can make sounds below 80 hertz, but not speech below 80 hertz. It would be like, like weird
Yeah.
stuff.
So that's interesting. I think that it falls into different.
It's some of the few that we've got where it's very clear speech. It's very, the decibel level of it is loud enough where you don't have to really tweak the audio very much at all for it to be audible.
The other thing that my dad brought up that I hadn't thought about is we didn't hear it.
Yeah.
Yet somehow the recorder managed to pick it up, and that's not how sound works.
Right.
If it went to the recorder, it would have gone to our ears.
Right. It's not. And the thing is, we had other equipment going at the time. It doesn't appear on the other equipment. It's directly into that.
And what deeply bothers me about it, it sounds like something's right here talking into it, and I'm holding that thing, and now I'm just imagining the giant freaking.
Yeah. How close does that thing have to be? Well, and that's where you have to think. Okay, so is it talking really, really close to the microphone, and the microphone's catching a very quiet sound that was too far from our ears to hear? Or was its face in our piece of equipment and it directly is like altering the file to make that happen? Because we had a similar thing at Needful Things.
Where the audio cut out?
Yeah, it shut off the recording, like the normal recording, and wrote over the file. And there's just like separate words there. And we've got that section of time on like 6 other recorders, 4 video recorders, and there's nothing in the room making that sound. And it's just like that recorder cut off, but somehow still kept recording. Yeah. And there's just something else there. And it's like, hey, have fun with this, a-hole.
Are there any more questions?
I don't know. No, not really. I think, I think we spent a lot of time talking about Kyle, but Skinwalkers, it's an interesting thing to like do research on, but it's one of those things, like, if you want any good answers, you have to go so much deeper than Wikipedia, because it really is something that they don't talk about. And they really, I guess it's because just me being an American or a Texan or whatever, because we don't have stuff like that over here. Like, you go to Asia, and they're mischief spirits, and they have the suicide force and things like that. Like, they as a people really strongly believe in those things. And then you go to Australia, and they have some stuff like that down there, with what's that religion? They do the haka and.
Oh, that's in New Zealand.
New Zealand, sorry, not Australia. Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
But they have very, very strong beliefs about their, But over here, we have our angels and our demons and werewolves and vampires. But people aren't as like ingrained. Like, they do believe, but they're not like as ingrained and secretive about it. And like, oh, we don't talk about the devil because then the devil could come. And if people are that much into it, we send them to institutions. Like, that's how we deal with it.
Yeah.
But the Navajo Nation, it really is like that, and you don't go there and talk it. Like, they'll escort you off the reservation for coming in as an outsider and talking about these things.
Catherine asks, are there any other cemeteries that you have seen anything like that at, since Skinwalkers live at cemetery? No.
I mean, other than the face you saw at a Great House, like, if you want to link those two
20.
things, yeah.
But I'm not sure if they, live in cemetery. That's just what the lore I was reading. Why would anyone want to live in a cemetery?
Isn't it if you throw grave dirt in their face?
Oh, I made that up.
Oh, you made that up?
Yeah, I made that up.
I like that. That's awesome.
I made that up before I knew they lived in cemeteries. Crap. Where was I? Skinwalkers. No, I've never seen anything like that at another cemetery.
Nah.
Or anywhere else, for that matter.
I haven't seen anything that profound anywhere.
Ever.
Anything. Nothing. I've heard profound things at other places, but I've never had a visual experience like that. And that's including my first visual experience that started, like, me even doing this sort of thing. But that was like a person. Like, I saw like a person ghosty But he didn't look like a. That's the thing that was really weird about that whole situation, is because when I saw it, I thought it was a person. Like I guess I'm up to 3 visual encounters now, I guess, where every time I've seen something, it never looked like an apparition. I'm always tricked into thinking like, oh, there's a person there.
But yeah, when I was
hey, what are you doing? What's going on?
When I was a teenager and I saw that thing at my mom's house, I thought it was a person.
Yeah, but then you go to like investigate and, oh, hey, this is just a broom closet. There's nobody in here, and then you promptly crap yourself and go hide at the McDonald's for 2 hours before you go back to work. But I don't know. So if I had read about the Skinwalkers or had a discussion about that before that experience, ultimately I would brush it completely off, just like werewolves or Wendigos or anything else that would be on the show Supernatural. I never would have gave it a second thought. But having the experience first,
then reading about it,
and then plugging it together,
and the history,
really just like ingrained it. And I hate it. Do I believe in Skinwalkers? No, not in the least bit. No, but it's the only way to describe. It's the only way to describe the experience. And so, we say it tongue in cheek. There's a Skinwalker out there. We don't really think that, but
there was something curious out there. I don't know.
I feel like there's truth to almost every myth. Like, everybody that thinks they saw a Bigfoot, they saw something. I don't think most people are inherently just liars or hoaxers. Some people are.
But most aren't. I don't think that either.
I like to get a rise out of people. I make stupid stuff up, to joke with your kids or whatever. But I think people genuinely go into the woods and see stuff. I know they do, because we went out into a cemetery and saw stuff. There are things out there. We may not understand them. They may not actually be paranormal. We may not be seeing what we think we're seeing. Yeah. What we think we're seeing. But there's definitely an experience tied to it. Mm-hmm. So, and for something to go back that far, and for that many cultures to have something so similar, and the thing is, and to tie it to some of them, and we covered it a little bit on the lycanthropy episode, but there are people that think they can turn like it's ingrained in their brain.
Clinical lycanthropy.
Right, and they put these people under a MRI, is the brain scan? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they put them under an MRI, and they notice their brain actually functions differently than, like, we're finding that out a lot for a lot of conditions.
Yeah, is that your brain actually functions different at the most basic level.
Right, and some kooky scientist went out there and said, well, let's do an MRI on a wolf or whatever animal they did, and they look, okay, this is how the animal brain functions, and then they compared it to the guy that thought he could turn into that animal, and it turned out they lit up in the same areas, sort of thing. So we have technology to kind of diagnose that and look at that now and kind of understand, well, okay, they have some brain chemistry that makes them think they're an animal, or they have pica, it's just whatever. But you didn't have that then, so you probably had, feral people on the outskirts of those tribes that acted like freaking animals. They probably wore animal skins and did horrific things and stuff, and they didn't question it. They weren't like, oh, yeah, great grandpa out there is mentally unhealthy. They're like, no, he messed with some dark magic.
He's a skinwalker now.
And he's a skinwalker now, and we stay away from Grandpappy because he likes to eat people and then touch them on their boo-boo. And so,
speaking of Native American lore, have y'all seen the videos out there of night walkers? Native Americans have carved exact sculptures of what people have caught on CCTV. I'll have to look that up when we're done.
That will be looked up.
Yeah.
Okay, so those creepiest looking paranormal I've seen that actually have the native lore to back them up, and I haven't seen a convincing skinwalker. I keep seeing this these couple of pictures of like this like backwards legs thing, but I mean we know what those are, and then the one I saw that really scared the hell out of me. And I don't think they were trying to pass it off as a skinwalker. I can't remember what they were saying it was, but it was a bear that had it had lost all its fur and was like scabbed over, and it was like the scariest thing I've ever seen, because most animals, when you shave,
animals look freaking horrifying.
Hairless animals usually just look really sad. You know,
bears look scary.
Bears are like, and you're like, oh my God, I want to die. It's just the worst thing ever. But
because that was my theory for the thing we saw at Kyle, was a bear with the mange.
It is like, it would be really weird, but it is possible that, I mean, we have black bears in Texas.
They're not common, especially not in that area, but.
And see, I think that's a thing that's the problem sometimes. Like, people that were seeing the black cats for a long time, and they're like, oh no, they're not down there. They don't exist. And then it turns out they do. They're just not common. And so you have people that see these things out in the wild or whatever, and they're like, I saw this thing, and everybody's like, that's BS. And it's like, no, they really saw a thing, and it was a baboon. We don't have baboons in Texas. Well,
no, but you have enough people taking in wild animals.
Yeah, it's like, not commonly, but I'm sure Michael Jackson did tours through here once or twice. He might have lost one off a plane. Like, you don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, what did you tell me about the tigers in captivity?
Well, I was looking up that thing that people say about there being more tigers in captivity in Texas than in the wild, which doesn't turn out to be accurate, but there are a lot of captive tigers in Texas.
There's a shitload of captive tigers. So if I go out in the woods and I'm like, dude, I saw a tiger out there, everybody be like, dude, no, you didn't see a tiger. Turns out, though, somebody's tiger might have got loose.
Yeah, Bubba lost his pet tiger.
Yeah, and nobody believes you until somebody gets mauled by a freaking tiger, or a megalodon. No,
megalodon.
So I don't know. I don't have much else to say on skinwalkers other than
I find them really interesting. They make for good horror stories.
Yeah, and I've had, God dang.
Don't worry about it.
I've had tons of nightmares about, if I hadn't had like some kind of personal experience where the only thing currently on the books that fits is
Skinwalker.
Like, I'd feel more comfortable being like, I saw a ghost, but that doesn't fit. It's nuts.
Yeah, like the people who report seeing big felines in the UK, which does not have big felines unless they escape. Yeah.
But it happened, and that's the thing. It happened. Like, people that see the chupacabra.
Allie ran it over one time. She's not watching today, but I think what she ran over was a sick coyote.
Probably. And, a lot of people, dogs get mange. That's the thing. People don't take care of their animals, and they let them, we let animals go just because we don't want them all the time. Like, not me, but
no,
like...
but I've seen people do it.
Yeah.
I've picked up many a cat that someone has, dumped.
Right, and I don't know. I mean, we just kind of have it coming at some point. So, do I think these things are supernatural? No, but I think there are things out there, and I think skinwalkers kind of fit into that, and that lore has just kind of kept going. And you know what? It wouldn't surprise me at all if the Navajo people don't even believe in it now.
And they're just effing with people.
Yeah, they're all doctors and lawyers and modern people at this point. But we screwed them.
They have their tribal meeting and they're like, "How many people did we scare with skinwalkers this week?"
It's like, bring them into casino. And why am I talking like this? This is so
you're
racist.
An effing racist. Oh my God.
It is, but they're just like, all right, all the white people that come into the casino today, be sure we put the flyers out about skinwalkers. Casually, though.
Dude, I would. I would. I do think the colonizers have it coming.
We do. Badly.
They do have cooler legends than us, though. I like Native American
Dude,
horror.
I love Native American magic so much better than, like, all the stupid... It's like, look, I can cast spells and hocus pocus and voodoo dolls and all that. And Native Americans are like, I can turn into a fucking eagle and cure sickness. And I'm like, yeah! America!
But it is interesting that they all sort of have this monster in common.
Yeah, and across different kind of
Different cultures, different groups.
Different culture barrier. And, I think a lot of that came through the Bering Strait. We've seen, like, how we kind of migrated.
Well, that's what I was talking about.
here.
Like, it started in the northwest and kind of...
Oh, my God. What does Alaska have? Is, like, they have to... The Inuits have to have something...
They have Wendigos, I'm pretty sure. In Alaska.
That would be the most horrific place to run into... like some kind of cryptid beast.
Oh my God! Yeah, it's so isolated.
I guess you know what? Alaska doesn't have Yetis that I know of.
I don't think so. I think that's another continent.
Oh,
thing.
I remember what I was going to bring up. So, are we going to Greer Island tomorrow? Because I was thinking about live streaming from there.
Let's see how tomorrow goes.
So, depending on the weather, we're actually going to go out to Greer Island to look for the Lake Worth Goat Man. Which kind of ties in because we were talking about like some of the Goat Man legends kind of tie back to the Skinwalker thing. And, of course, I'm not going to go into it. We did a show on that, but we might live stream during the day tomorrow because we're basically going to do like some Goat Man Sasquatch hunting out there on the island.
Native Legend podcast is needed, please. And Amelia says Alaska does have Wendigos.
Yes. I want to go to Alaska so bad, but not for Wendigos.
I just want to go see Alaska.
Yeah. Northern Lights for the win. Okay, so I've pretty much run the clock on Skinwalker.
This podcast went over.
Okay, so tune in next week, guys, because Amelia, who's in the comments, and his brother are going to be in studio on the show for his group Paranormal Brothers, which we're going to talk to them about some of the investigations they've done. We'll probably talk about Kyle at length some more, and then we're also going to talk about some kind of stuff we've been doing with the website, which we're networking with 6 other groups right now, trying to get like this new thing in the works. And I'm not going to spoil too much of it now. But we'll probably talk about it with the brothers when they get on, and talk about like how it's going to help unify groups and things like that. Because I'm sure they'll have a lot to say about that too. Like, because they investigate totally different, well, not totally different, but they have different things that they do than what we do. Their goals are different than what we do. Their beliefs are different than what we do. But we get along. Like, we like them, and we're trying to kind of standardize the tools in the way the investigations are, so we can compare data and like cross-reference. So we'll talk a lot about that. And they're coming in. They've been long-time supporters of us. They actually come out and see us at the conventions and stuff like that, so we always appreciate them. So they're going to be our first colleagues in the field that have come into the studio that aren't actually a part of our group in some way. So I'm actually pretty excited about that.
Yeah, it's going to be cool.
I'm going to have to clean this place up. But I guess that's our show for you. Got anything else? I don't know if y'all saw our events page, but we have the Yoakum Community Hospital investigation coming up in March, and we've got all the stuff for that finalized. Oh, I do need to get you guys to fill out your safety waivers, because that place is dangerous and we can get cancer in there, and they don't want to be held liable. And then we have also booked another investigation in Gainesville at Hill House Manor, and that's going to be a joint investigation between us and the Unseen Paranormal Network. Haiti is coming down from New Jersey to come do that one with us, and that's a pretty interesting one. But we're gonna get the run of this old Texas manor for the whole night, and we've got that stuff coming up. And
I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that's it. So you guys all have a legit weekend. If you're gonna go out and investigate, be sure to be safe. Stay away from Wendigos and Skinwalkers. If you go into cemeteries at night, don't go into the back lot, because that's how you get lost and end up in another dimension and bring back the wrong Sarah. Just everybody be safe and don't do illegal stuff.
Sure.
That's the big thing. We don't want to know about the illegal stuff you did. All right. So
thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Have a good night.